In the picturesque village of Meadowbrook, where the days were long and the night starlit, there lived an old lady named Mrs. Whitaker and a young man named Jamie. Mrs. Whitaker was known in the village for her expansive garden, which blossomed with vibrant flowers and fresh vegetables. As time wore on, however, tending to the garden became increasingly difficult for her. Jamie, a recent arrival in Meadowbrook, had moved to start anew after a bustling city life left him longing for simplicity and a closer connection to nature. He lived in a small cottage down the lane from Mrs. Whitaker. Every morning, he would see the old lady with her hat askew, laboring in her garden, her face determined but her movement slow and pained. One morning, as Jamie jogged past Mrs. Whitaker's house, he noticed her struggling to carry a heavy watering can. Without a second thought, he approached her and offered his help. Grateful but proud, Mrs. Whitaker initially insisted she could manage on her own. But as they talked, she warmed to Jamie, impressed by his kindness and genuine interest in her garden. From that day on, Jamie made it a daily ritual to help Mrs. Whitaker. He learned the names of all the plants and how to care for them under her guidance. The garden, under their joint care, flourished even more, becoming the pride of Meadowbrook. The old lady shared with Jamie her vast knowledge of gardening, along with stories of her life and the history of the village. Their friendship deepened, and Mrs. Whitaker, who had lived a solitary life since the passing of her husband, found joy in Jamie's company. The village soon took notice of the blossoming garden and the newfound energy in Mrs. Whitaker. People would stop by to admire the garden, and in return, she would share the produce with them. Jamie's kindness had revitalized not just the garden, but Mrs. Whitaker's spirit as well. One day, Jamie received a letter from a former colleague, offering him a lucrative position back in the city. It was an opportunity to return to his old life, with all its comforts and fast pace. Conflicted, he shared the news with Mrs. Whitaker, unsure of what to do. Mrs. Whitaker, wise and perceptive, gave Jamie a thoughtful look. "You've brought so much joy here, Jamie. But don't let my old bones anchor you to a place if your heart yearns to roam. You've done good here, and that good will follow you." Jamie pondered her words deeply. After much thought, he realized that his heart no longer yearned for the city life. He had found contentment and a sense of community in Meadowbrook that he hadn't realized he was searching for. He declined the job offer and chose to stay in the village. As time passed, Jamie's decision proved fortuitous. With a recommendation from one of the villagers, he started his own small landscaping business, which quickly thrived thanks to the local support. Mrs. Whitaker remained his closest friend and his most trusted advisor, proud of the man who had helped her with a watering can and had stayed to cultivate a richer life. In helping Mrs. Whitaker, Jamie not only discovered his passion but also found a community that embraced and supported him. His good karma, the goodwill he had freely given, came back to him manifold, enriching his life in ways he had never imagined. Thank you for watching.
Please let us know if there's anything in particular you're interested in watching. If you like our videos, please subscribe and share it with your friends. Also, if you want more, just click on these videos.